everyone, and welcome to tonight's Planning Committee of the 27th of August 2025. The first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Howcross-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm subbing for Councillor Linda Bowden.
Thank you. Councillor Nastoroff.
Thank you, Chair. I'm subbing for Councillor Maritime.
Thank you. Councillor Brake. Okay, thank you. And Councillor Fern.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, apologies from Councillor Anang, and I'm substituting for him.
Thank you. We also have apologies from Councillor Hammondishe, but we're unable to find a sub for him. So item 2 is the record of the meeting held on the 2nd of July 2025, along with the update in the supplementary agenda approved. Item 3 on the agenda, I can confirm that there are no late items which do not appear on the main agenda. Item 4, do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? So before moving on to the main part of the agenda, Councillor Sands and Councillor Pearce have asked to speak as ward members for agenda item 6. Is this agreed by members? Thank you. So as per the supplementary agenda, for agenda item 7, the planning application for Acorn Wharf, there are outstanding matters to resolve with the Environment Agency. Therefore, is it agreed that this application is withdrawn from the agenda? Yeah. Thank you. So for the first planning application of the evening is agenda item 5, planning application for St John Fisher Comprehensive School. Peter Hockney, Service Manager, will be presenting this application. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this application is for the field at the new St John Fisher Catholic Comprehensive School on City Way. This is an outline of the existing 3G artificial pitch, which is on site, and there's an aerial photograph. Again, you can see it in location there. City Way, bounding it on the western side, and properties in the fort to the northeast of the pitch. The main school buildings are in this location with the access here off City Way. The application is for the installation of floodlights. So that's the operational development that's part of this application. You can see the indication of the floodlights here, 15 metres in height, with the baffles around the lights themselves located along the sides of the pitch. This is the light spill diagram, which you can see in terms of the coverage of the lighting will be marked within the pitch bounds, apart from where it extends out slightly to the north. But critically, there would be no light spill beyond, well, into any of the neighbouring properties, the closest of which are these ones in the fort, which are approximately 31 metres away. Closest properties on City Way are around about 48 metres from the side of the pitch. So as I say, the light spill has and the height of the lights as well at 15 metres would ensure that there would be no spill onto those properties. Here's an indication of the lighting that's to be used in another location, and you can see from this how the angle of the lighting ensures that it lights the pitch, but the remaining outside area stays in darkness, and those are similar lights to those that are proposed under this application, and they have been conditioned with one of the recommended conditions think condition 3 on the papers. The second part of the application is to allow the later use of the pitch for community uses further into the evening, Monday to Friday. So currently there is consent for the pitch to be used until 8 o'clock Monday to Friday, and the proposal is to extend that to 10 o'clock Monday to Friday. The current permission allows 9 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night on Saturday. The current proposal is to reduce that on a Saturday to 6 p.m. Rather than 8 p.m. And on a Sunday, again, the proposal is from 9 in the morning till 6 p.m., which is an extension from the current hours, which are 10 till 2 on a Sunday. The original application did seek permission for 10 o'clock 7 days a week. However, we did think that was excessive, and therefore the proposals are to have a shorter period on a Saturday and Sunday. The proposals in terms of the usage are similar to other similar uses around the Medway area. For example, Star Meadow in Gillingham, around the back of the Star pub that's used by Holland and Blair Football Club. That is also in use until 10 o'clock at night on a Monday to Friday. And what used to be Play Football, which is now PSA Performance Centre, which was part of the Howard School, is also 10 o'clock Monday to Friday. That's actually 10 o'clock Saturday and Sunday as well. So the proposals aren't dissimilar to other similar facilities around the Medway area. And as a result, we are recommending that permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I now open the floor to members. Any members? Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. I welcome this sort of thing. I mean, the community use on these football pitches and things like that, there is a big demand for it. So, and having looked at the hours that other facilities are using, I don't really see any problem with the timing on it. So, quite happy to support this one.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. Sheer coincidence, actually, my ward colleague, David Breaker, is with us this evening, and I had a meeting about a possible 3G pitch in Lordswood yesterday morning, and at that meeting was a representative of the Football Foundation who informed us that Medway has quite a severe shortage of 3G pitches. It's running into double figures. So I think having the pitch illuminated and allowing the extra hours, it's not perhaps as good as having new pitches, but at least it makes better use of this one, and that addresses some of that shortfall. So on that basis, it's very much to be welcomed. It was interesting to hear that one of the big drivers behind the demand for greater demand for football pitches, the fact that there are far more girls playing football now, and it was interesting to hear from the Football Foundation that they were absolutely insisted that the girls' game is on a par to, and it's absolutely, which I think is absolutely right, and I think we can all be proud now that our lady footballers, when it comes to international games, certainly seem to be doing better than the boys, far, far better. So, I think that is very much to be welcomed. This has always been a playing area anyway. In fact, I looked at the 1933 copy I've got of the Ordnance Survey map because I wanted to see how it would interfere, as Historic England have claimed, with the fields of fire. And looking at the satellite from Google and that map, it certainly won't interfere with that at all. So I think Historic England have overstated their case, in my opinion. The only remains of the old Fort Pitt that are there underneath the developments called the fort are actually subterranean. And to give credit where it's due to Bellway Homes, Dave kindly reminded me who it was earlier this evening. Bellway Homes did a really, really good job in preserving what remains with them. In fact, even to the extent of lifting some of the houses up so the foundations wouldn't interfere with the remains below. So I think that was a good example of how you can deal with historic things. So all in all, I think this is a very good proposal, and I think we should all support it wholeheartedly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Peter, for a very comprehensive report. And I'm a big fan of Sports England, but some of the things do, I suppose, trouble and concern me. I suppose I worry about the traffic flow and the maybe sleep disturbance, the effect on wildlife and the pollution from increased traffic. But the thing that does worry me most is the 10 o'clock on a Sunday. Had we considered, so like my jacuzzi room's at the bottom of my garden, and to save money and, you know, also the environment, I've just got like a sensor, motion sensors, so that when I need to go down there, that it's lit up then. So if the pitch is not being used, has any of that been explored? That's just the question I have. Thank you.
Peter, did you want to come back on that?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, just for clarification, the original proposal was to 10 o'clock on a Sunday, but the amended proposal that we secured, which is before members tonight, is for 6 o'clock on a Sunday. So it has reduced in that time. In my experience, the cost of running the floodlights is so high that if no one's using the pitch, they will be off. I mean, if members did wish to add an additional condition that the floodlight shouldn't be on unless the pitch is being used as a belt and braces, then I'm sure that could be accommodated.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I got muddled with the Sunday. My medication's just been changed this week. I'm back on morphine as opposed to OxyContin, so sorry. Chair, would that be okay if we put that?
Yeah, if that's agreed by members, we can definitely put that condition in, yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Next we had Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. I remember the application last year for the former St John's Fisher site where Sports England objected to the change of residential because of the loss of playing fields. And even though they were locked up, they weren't in use, they still objected. And I might have called them, I might have said that I felt a bit sorry for the civil servants, and I might have said that the objections were a tad ridiculous. So the corollary of that would be I wholeheartedly support this. We need to get, as for the reasons that have been explained by many, we need to increase physical activity. There's a clear dearth in the amount of recreational football facilities, particularly 3G pitches, which are suitable in all weathers. One point that was made actually by Peter in his analysis was also noting the precedent of two other pitches. And I did a little bit of a quick Google Maps compare, and actually there's a lot more residential closer, particularly to the facility at the Ancorians, than are necessarily for here. So on the balance of that, I'm probably more happy to to wholeheartedly support this in view of some residents' objections. I also read on the supplementary one, there was an objection talking about Chatham Town and potentially then bringing more fans in. I think on behalf of the planning committee, actually, we would like to support Chatham Town's women's sides and encourage them to further success as the leading women's football club in the Medway towns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Chair. So, again, I support any initiatives that encourage us to get active and healthy. However, I do have a couple of questions just for clarification around the flood lighting itself. So obviously there are some concerns from Historic England to begin with. Has there been any consideration of acoustic barriers, for instance? And what exactly is the impact on biodiversity? Having lived in that area of Cityway, I'm aware that there is a large amount of mammal activity around that area, and I'm concerned that we haven't had a thorough impact assessment in terms of biodiversity and our cultural heritage around it. So just if you could give me a little bit of clarification to ensure that we have covered all bases on that. And then the other question is really around the enforceability of the operating hours. So clearly some residents are concerned that the current usage of the playing fields has been a little lax in terms of operating times. How clear are we in terms of ensuring that the operating hours up to 10 o'clock at night are going to be enforceable and monitored? I guess those are my usual questions around biodiversity, ensuring we've done a thorough impact assessment, and ensuring that if we do extend it to 10 o'clock, that it is enforceable, monitored and adhered to.
Thank you. Peter, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you. If I start with the last question first, really, I think the key point and the key part of the consideration of this application is to ensure that we work with the applicant to give them something that works for them, but also protects the amenity of nearby residents. These times do work for them, so I wouldn't anticipate any breaches of those hours. But if there were, then it could be dealt with through the enforcement procedure, usually through a breach of condition notice or similar. So, yeah, they are enforceable. But as I say, I would expect that given that we've worked with the applicant to come up with these hours, that there would be no need or no future breaches as a result. In terms of the Historic England comments, I think yes, they've identified some harm, but I think they've assessed it as at the lower end of less than substantial harm. In order to then balance that against the public benefits, that's where, and you can clearly see public benefits of this application in terms of the wider community use and the extension to people who may not have access to a similar pitch, and that, in our view, outweighs the sort of low level of less than substantial harm in terms of the heritage element. And then on the ecology side, again, it's if I go back to the light spill map, you can, I mean, I was going to say you can see, but you probably can't, but it's each of these little crosses has a number next to it. And what we've ensured is that there is no light spill at the sort of woodland elements which surround the pitch on both sides, to ensure that it doesn't interfere with foraging mammals or indeed bats. So, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Hamilton, did you want to come back?
Just on the, has there been consideration of acoustic barriers? given that it's going to be in use until 10 o'clock at night?
There hasn't, because those would typically be very high structures, wooden fences. For something like this, you'd probably be looking at 3 metres for an acoustic barrier. That in itself would create other planning issues, which may or may not be acceptable, but in any case don't form part of this planning application in front of us. Thank you.
Dave, did you want to come in as well?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just 2 things, if I can, on that. The first, just backing up what Peter's saying in terms of the acoustic barrier, which will be solid, and the point that this is part of the fields of fire, so should be open, and an acoustic barrier would close off that. In addition, those residents in the fort, they have those very open views across the field, and it would close off those. So you would solve one problem but cause another problem if you had an acoustic barrier there. Then finally, in relation to your concern about maybe breaching of hours or other issues, I remember when the planning application for the school was being considered, I think it was Councillor Maple was talking about having a community engagement condition, which I think we included, but also so that if issues are raised by residents in terms of any of the school operations, but could be not adhering to hours, which I agree with Pete, I don't think will happen, then there is an ability for those residents with their ward councillors to speak to the head of the school and resolve those issues.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson. Just to say, I really welcome the positive comments from the committee towards Sports England, particularly the recognition that we do need more sports pitches. It's just a shame that this committee recently voted to build houses on a site which used to hold 2 football pitches on the old Sturdy Club site along Stoke Road in Yew. So, it's good to say that we recognise we need sports pitches, but we need to make sure that decisions match that. Thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Jones. Sorry, I forgot you earlier, I think.
That's quite all right, Chair. It gave me the chance to respond to that last point by Councillor Pearce. I shall be looking forward to his support and indeed to Councillor Galvin's support at the budget meeting in the context of 3G pitches. So the other thing I wanted to say was I think we shouldn't overemphasise the importance of the fields of fire. Yes, it's historically important, and yes, the Chief Planning Officer is quite right to say that the field should be open, but I can remember this discussion in connection with the Mid-Kent College site in Brompton when that was given planning permission, where it was revealed that on the fields of fire there hadn't actually been any fire because Napoleon never actually arrived to go round the back to create any. So let's not get too carried away with the history, and in terms of that I empathise with Councillor Galvin's comments. I think this is a good application, and we should probably add the additional condition that Councillor Howcroft-Scott has suggested, but I'll come to that when the report is moved. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of what I was going to talk about has been covered. Despite my elevated status of sitting next to the Vice Chair, I still didn't quite hear what you said, Dave. We shouldn't be flippant about what residents say. Obviously, we're here to listen to them. But my initial reaction is we should definitely send out a message that we support more physical activity at school. It was one of the great shames in my lifetime when that diminished. Obviously, there's a clear link between health, physical activity, sport, and particularly sport in schools. So I want to better support this. I see the comment from Historic England. I've got to say that sentence, lower end of less than substantial harm, what a lovely sentence that is. When it comes to potential noise level, because obviously we covered light level, have we got our own independent judgment about that. I'm not sure if that's a question you can answer. What I'm leading up to is the idea about monitoring, rather than just be reactive to when there is a problem. Did I hear you say that under Councillor Maple there was some kind of dialogue going on already? Because I am concerned that the school takes a proactive, I know this is not planning, but if you've got a dialogue going on, they do take a proactive approach to making sure that nothing silly is going on and, you know, unnecessary behaviour, and they are literally doing sports. Because one potential could be inviting others to come along and the numbers. I mean, I know this is not a club. Clubs do this. Rugby clubs do this. Where are the rugby pitches, by the way? But hey-ho, football's our national sport. You know, if this catches on, then other schools may want to come along and use the facility. So there could be potential for a considerable number of people. So it'd be nice to know it's kind of in hand before it starts, if that makes sense.
Sorry, did you have any comments on that?
No, I think I understand exactly what Councillor Peake is saying. And if there are concerns, then the school want to be part. They want to be part of the community. They want to provide community facilities, but they don't want to be harmful to the community. So they're very happy to, along with the ward councillors, to have regular meetings with the local community and address concerns where they can.
Yeah, and just to add to that, at Star Meadow, we did have issues there where they were breaching their times, and it was dealt with very swiftly, and the problem was solved. So normally community places like that do want to do the best to keep the community happy, don't they? So, yeah. Is there any other member? No? So with this planning application, I did have concerns, first of all, with the timings. I was worried with it being 10 o'clock at night, but I'm quite satisfied now that it is in line with the other 3G pitches in Medway during the week. And also, it's further away from residential properties than what, as Councillor Field said, the Star Meadow is. It is important that we do have 3G pitches, as has been said. We don't have enough in Medway. They're saying that there's a need for 15 full-size 3D pitches to cater for 573 teams in our local authority area. So we only have 6 at the moment, so this would take it down by 1, but it is still a well-needed facility that we must have. So I'm more than happy to support this application tonight. I would now move over to Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair, St John Fisher Catholic Comprehensive School, City Way, Rochester. Move approval with conditions 1 to 4 as set out in the report, and an additional condition has been suggested by fellow members in terms of ensuring the floodlights are off when the pitches are not in use, and I suggest that the Chief Planning Officer, in consultation with the Chair, Vice Chair and spokespersons, draw up a suitable condition in terms of that.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Is that seconded? Thank you. Those for the application?
That's 14, Chair.
The application is therefore approved. Now moving on to agenda item 6, planning application, land to the south of Stoke Road. Aaron Nichols, Senior Planner, will be presenting this application. So over to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start my presentation, can I draw members' attention to the supplementary agenda for 2 points? Point 1 relates to the removal of condition 4, which required the submission of a service strategy. This has been provided by the applicant and has been accepted. And number 2, the inclusion of a condition which requires a walkover of the site to ensure that landscaping is as per the submitted details before it is transferred over to a management company. This reserved matters application is for the construction of 100 dwellings and the discharge of 12 conditions in relation to the granted outline application. The proposed dwellings would range from single-storey to 2 stories in height and be a mix of bungalows, detached properties, semi-detached and terrace dwellings. And the application is being brought to committee as a result of the number of objections received contrary to the officer's recommendation. This slide shows the site location with the site marked in red. And this slide shows the application site in relation to the wider context, with the existing settlement of Who to the west, the Peninsula Way to the north, and the Kingsnorth Industrial Estate to the east, and the River Medway to the south. This slide shows the application site in relation to nearby applications. Taylor Wimpey have secured planning permission on a number of sites towards the west, which a majority of have now been completed. To the north, the applicants, Jones Homes, have recently completed a 65-unit scheme. And to the west, Esquire have recently obtained permission for 134 units alongside commercial and community facilities delivered over 3 separate sites. The application site was subject to a granted outline permission for the construction of up to 100 homes, with all matters reserved apart from the access. This slide shows the granted access road, which is being utilised for this application. And this slide shows the proposed site layout of the scheme. Similar to other schemes in the area, it is designed to be in keeping with the character of the area and provide views towards the estuary from Stoke Road and a number of points from within the site. And the following slides show views from the area. This slide shows images 1 and 2, shows views from the south looking towards the north. They also show the neighbouring Taylor Wimpey site. Image 3 shows a wider view from the estuary. Image 4 shows the site from the eastern footpath. And image 5 shows the site from the neighbouring Taylor Wimpey site, looking towards the north. This slide shows images along Stoke Road, with images 1, 2 and 4 showing views to the east, and images 3 and 5 showing views to the west. And this slide shows further images from within the site. Images 1 shows a view towards the south, image 2 towards the southeast, image 3 towards the southwest, showing the location of the orchard, and image 4 and 5 provide views towards the west. This slide shows further views from within the site, with images 1 and 2 providing views towards the north and the completed Jones Homes development, and images 3 and 4 show views towards Yew Tree Lodge, and image 5 shows a view towards the southeast. This slide shows the proposed affordable housing layout. As set out in the report, the proposal offers a policy-compliant 25% affordable housing, which includes the provision of 4 two-bedroom bungalows, 8 two-bedroom houses, 12 three-bedroom houses, and 1 four-bedroom house. This slide shows the proposed parking strategy, which is considered to be policy compliant. This includes the provision of 188 allocated spaces, 15 garages, 25 visitor spaces, and 5 wheelchair compliant spaces. And this slide provides an overview of the proposed landscape for the scheme. As set out in the report, the scheme is exempt from the 10% B&G requirement, as the outline permission was granted prior to its introduction. The scheme includes the plantation of 116 trees across the site, alongside several sections of new native hedgerow, scrubland, and herbaceous planting. Alongside these, the scheme includes the provision of 100 bird and 100 bat boxes, 1 on each dwelling, and the provision of bee barks, log piles, and invertebrate boxes. An ecology impact assessment has been submitted by Lizard, which highlights the impacts on biodiversity will be negligible and non-significant. Adjacent to the orchard in the southeastern area is an open space provision of site. The scheme includes a children's play area, which is proposed as shown. Some of the images provide an overview of the play provision that's proposed on there, and this is considered acceptable. And the application site is considered to be in a sustainable location. It's within a 30-minute walk to the village centre and bus stops. In addition to these, the recently granted Esquire scheme to the east of the site includes the provision of cafe and community centre and nursery, although these haven't been built out yet. The following slides provide a selection of elevations and floor plans of some of the proposed dwellings. These are for a 2-bedroom detached bungalow. These are for a 2-bed terraced and end-of-terraced house. And these are for a 3-bed terraced and end-of-terraced. These are for a 3-bed detached, a further 3-bed detached, and a larger 3-bed detached, a 4-bed detached property, and another 4-bed, and finally a 5-bed detached property. As set out in the report, all of the dwellings meet or exceed the National Guide Space Standards and provide gardens in line with the Council's requirements, and the proposed materials, palettes and design of the proposed dwellings are considered suitable in this location. And the following slides will provide some sectional street views across the site. This view shows the dwellings that will front onto the orchard, play space and open space area on the site. It's kind of shown by the red line, which gives you an idea of what you're looking at. And the top section here will provide a view looking towards the east from the central corridor. So you'll be looking down here. And the two lower sections basically combined together will provide a view looking south along Stoke Road, so along the front of the application site. And the bottom section here provides a view towards the site from the neighbouring Taylor Wimpey site here, which has a large kind of visual corridor with green space provision, and this provides a view from that. And this slide provides generated images of the proposed development. Image 1 provides a view looking from Stoke Road down into the site, showing the previously agreed vehicle access point. And images 2 and 3 show views from the open space. In conclusion, overall, the proposal is considered to be acceptable and in line with policy and is recommended for approval, subject to the included conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I now move over to Ward Member Councillor Sands, who has 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, members, for allowing us to address you. I hope you're all well tonight. Just a quick couple of gripes first. I think it's page 40 of your paperwork. There is no Walter Bryce surgery in Who or anywhere else. Walter Bryce Centre is run by the Medway Community Healthcare, and they do the blood tests and the physiotherapy, so it's not a surgery. The surgery is actually the Elm surgery, and in all honesty, there's only 2 surgeries in the whole of the peninsula. It would have been nice to get them both right from the offset. Another gripe I have, and many of the elder residents of Who has, is the sports centre. There is a history to this. I won't bore you too much. The Who swimming pool was renamed Who Sports Centre by Councillor Alan Jarrett when he was leading the council. He did that when he shut down Deangate Community Golf Club after promising the people of the Who Peninsula a brand new sports centre. And within 17 days, we had a brand new sports centre. It just happened to be the swimming pool renamed. And of course, they couldn't actually supply us with a brand new sports centre. They were busy borrowing millions of pounds for splashes. It was stated at the planning that most developments on the peninsula are car reliant. This one is no different. Reading the documents, you'll find the phantom bus stops of Stoke Road are out again. They're still in hiding or missing in action, I'm not sure which. The nearest bus stop and the nearest shop to this is 3/4 of a mile away. Someone has done that walk in 13 minutes. It must have been a young, fit person, because a portly 72-year-old will take at least 30 minutes. and a mother and a pushchair and one other child will take 45 minutes. The footpath in Stoke Road is absolutely atrocious and dangerous in some areas, especially if you have young children and a pushchair. At some stage, you will have to go into the main road. Who itself is oversubscribed educationally, has a creaking healthcare system because of the amount of numbers. But more importantly, and is not often spoke about at planning, and I'm not sure why, is that for the whole of the Hoo Peninsula, massive, there's only 2 pharmacies. And if we keep adding houses like we are doing, we are not going to cope. And they are struggling now, if you go down to Hoo. Another concern is at the planning meeting, Hoos and Werburgh and Chatham Parish Council and ward councillors had grave concerns about the play area. It was inferior to the play areas that we use in the peninsula. It of poor quality, and the proposed floor treatment, in our experts' view, ROSPA, is quite dangerous. Now, that was brought up at planning, and I don't know if anything has been done about that since then, but it is something that should be at the top of the list. Our young children need safe places to play. The Hoos and Werburgh Parish Council neighbourhood plan, I think, brings into play Hoo 2, Hoo 5 and Hoo 6. Community facilities, quite poor. Housing standards, I don't think the equipment is up to much, and design. And before I go, I'm interested, there was talk of an orchard, a community orchard, which is quite ironic, really, because where you're building these houses was the last ancient wood orchard on the Hoo Peninsula, destroyed under bricks and tarmac, and you're going to give us 30 trees down the road. I just think it needs to be going away with. We need further discussions about the play area and about the community areas around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Councillor Pearce, would you now like to come forward to speak as ward member for 5 minutes?
Thank you, Chairperson. The outline application was approved in December 2022, and this reserved matters application was submitted in November 2024, which is just a couple of weeks before the outline permission timed out. Skin of the teeth. The previous developer who submitted the outline application was intending to build hideous modular houses on the site. And now, although it is accepted that the proposal in front of us is much better than the previous plan, there are some fundamental sustainability issues with the location. So you could have the best development in the world proposed on this site, but there are wider issues to contend with. Medway Council still hasn't carried out a road safety audit of Stoke Road. For example, there are narrow sections of footpath that are not DDA compliant for wheelchair users and prams. So when we talk about active travel and safe and user-friendly walking distances to the centre of Hoo, this does not exist, not in a safe way anyway. I would like to see a condition concerning a road safety audit on Stoke Road before this development commences. We have had a lot of development along Stoke Road, but Stoke Road itself has only had a couple of patches upgraded. There's been no overall survey undertaken, and there are issues, as I mentioned just a moment ago. No bus route exists along Stoke Road between Hoo and the Kings North employment area, although the council's got aspirations to put one in, and has been approving applications. This is all based on a non-existent bus provision. It doesn't exist at the moment. These developments from the outset, therefore, will be car dependent and dominant, and as it's very difficult to change travel habits later on, once people move in, they sort of get set in their ways in terms of their modes of transport. So it needs to be there from the outset, the bus provision. There are no primary school places for the families moving into these properties, and Medway Council admits this in their recent education report. There are promises of increases in primary school capacity, but this is after the houses are approved and built, so residents will have to suffer during the interim or long-term if provision is reduced or cancelled. Turning to a couple of representations that caught my attention. Both Natural England and KCC Ecology have advised the local planning authority to carry out what is known as an appropriate assessment concerning impacts on nearby habitats and wildlife. KCC Ecology has explicitly said, quote, "We advise that there is a need for the local planning authority to carry out an appropriate assessment as part of a habitats regulation assessment," end quote. For those that don't know, the application site is within around 450 metres of the Medway Estuary and Marshes Special Protection Area and sites of special scientific interest, a very special habitat. And part of this designated site comes inland along a channel of water to the south of the proposed development. So it's not just a estuary habitat, it also comes inland into Who itself, where all the wetlands are that are being proposed. The problem with building houses so close to a protected habitat is the negative impacts from recreational disturbance by people and predation of wildlife by pets, particularly cats, but also dogs. If they're let off the lead, they can disturb wildlife, etc. And I can't find any mention of an appropriate assessment being carried out by the local planning authority, either in the committee report this evening or on the planning portal. And under the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2017, before granting planning permission, the LPA must undertake an appropriate assessment if a proposal is likely to have an effect on a protected habitat, which both the ecologists and Natural England recognise. Although we have the Medway Council Area Birdwise Mitigation Scheme, the People over Wind's judgment at the Court of Justice confirmed that mitigation cannot be taken into account at the screening stage. Once there is potential for negative impact, an appropriate assessment is mandatory. So I'm very concerned about this and would like clarification from officers. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I now open the floor to members. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very interesting to hear the ward councillors, and I know the area very well because I've represented it for a long time. The points they're making about the footpath are 100%. The footpath, there needs a condition put on this that the footpaths are improved, because we've mentioned about the time it takes to walk to the village, but the children will be walking along to the schools in Pottery Road and 100 of Who, so there's further, that's the main side of the village going towards the school. The footpaths are fine, but Stoke Road, the footpaths need looking at, and I think the least the developers can do is put a first-class play area in. So I would ask that two conditions: one, to sort out the footpaths, another one to sort out the play area, and try and get the buses along Stoke Road. That needs to be a provision, because, as they've said, everyone will use a car. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. So I've just come out of it. I think it was page 33. What caught my eye on the report was a comment by Southern Water about, whilst they're not against it, they're not sure if they can meet the capacity. Sorry, I haven't got it in front of me. Is there anything that can be done? Oh, here we are, thank you. Have advised, although they do not object to the proposal, they advise there may be issues in relation to the network capacity. Now, as somebody who's got an ongoing, to put it politely, conversation with Southern Water and their ability to supply water and, you know, their job, this concerns me. This caught my eye since I saw those two words, Southern Water. I'm not sure what can be done about this, because obviously you cannot have a site that does not have an adequate water supply. So that is the question, please.
Thank you. I'll just move over to the officers for their comments now.
Thank you. In regards to the Southern Water, it's obviously Southern Water's requirement to provide water to them. As part of the application, there's an informative added on to the application, which basically advises the applicant to engage with Southern Water to resolve these issues.
Chair, just a few extra things to cover that point about, in addition to what Aaron said in relation to Councillor Peake's question, to cover Councillor Filmer's questions. In addition to what Aaron has said on the water, the developer has to pay a connection charge for every single dwelling house, and that is to cover improvements to the water supply and so on. Now, there are some sites where there are no improvements needed. So they're able to pocket that money and then spend that money along with connection charges on other sites to improve them. So Water Authority have said, yeah, there are some issues here. The developer has to pay those connection charges and then work with the Water Authority to address that. Second point, in relation to Councillor Filmer's point on the concerns regarding the footpath. Two things. My recollection is that with the outline application, we got improvements to the footpath immediately in front of the site, and that was delivered at the time of the outline application. But in addition to that, because I do understand the point you're saying, and the point that Councillor Sands and Councillor Pearce have made, that although there is a footpath which runs right the way along this side of Stoke Road, all the way to the centre of Who. Most places it's fine, but there are places where you've got a little verge and it does constrict the access there. As part of the outline, there was a contribution agreed of over 100,000 towards a number of things, which included improvements and provision of bridleways, public rights of way. What we can look at is how we can use that contribution to do those necessary improvements to those which are inadequate. In relation to the play area and play space, the council's play team have looked at the play facilities and have deemed them to be satisfactory. What we can do though is to look at the actual surfacing and see and just double check that that's fine and that's okay. If not, we can have further discussions with the applicant in relation to the final surfacing of that play area. Thanks, Chair.
Are members happy with that with regards to the footpath and the play area? Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other member? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I think Councillor Filmer and Councillor Peake covered most of my questions, so that's good. Thank you. I do have a question, though, regarding the Lower Medway Internal Drainage Board's request to have an updated drainage strategy with supporting evidence. Given the sensitive areas around the development, could the officers enlighten me whether that is likely to happen, and can that be a condition if it's... That's my first bit. Second one is just picking up on some of the concerns of the ward councillors around a broader issue around health. To what extent do you think this planning proposal meets the Building for a Healthy Life design code?
Over to you, Dave.
Chair, thank you very much. Thank you for those questions. In relation to the Lower Medway Drainage Board and their comments, it's not so much a comment for this application, but it relates more widely to the local plan. We're working very closely with the drainage boards, which are going to be combining soon. We're doing a flood risk strategy as part of the local plan, which will address all those issues. And there are some flooding issues out on the peninsula. We all know that, but they've been taken forward through the local plan process. In relation to Healthy Life, This is something that was very carefully considered at the time of the outline application, which has been approved. There are some good public rights of way which lead from this site to the north, to the south, as well as the those pedestrian links to the village. I do appreciate what Councillor Filmer, Councillor Pearce and Councillor Sands have said about improvements to footpath, and if we can get those, then it is a it provides a walkable link to the centre of the village. We've got the play facility on this site, so there are good measures for that that moving about the local area, other than by getting in your car. And just as an aside, the village has an exceptional, and I say exceptional, running club who run past here several times a week, and lots of the residents of the recent developments are part of that running club. So clearly see the healthy benefits of this area. And of course in the summer that includes utilising those paths which are right beside this site down to the river and around. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And some of the questions I had have been answered. So I'd just like to praise in one respect the drawings we've had this evening. At least that there's a good variety of house types here. And from the CGIs we've seen, I know sometimes there's a bit of computer generated imagery as well, and imagining as well as imagery. But it does look a nice looking development. I think a lot of the earlier developments, who not far from here, have been bland, to put it politely, to say the least. And I'm pleased to see that there is a variety of brick, tile and fenestrations on these drawings we've seen this evening, which I think is a really good thing. I think the lack of the bus service and the doctor's surgery and the like pharmacies, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, isn't it? I think with the increase of population, surely the health authorities have got to take note and allocate more resources to this area. And I think, you know, officers should, as well as members, should be putting pressure on the health authorities so that these residents, both existing and future residents, can have the facilities that one would normally respect. Just one small thing I was pleased to see, because they seem to be becoming an extinct species, is the provision of 4 bungalows on the site. I know people think it's a joke, but we're all getting older and there's more disabled people, so it's that house type that is needed. Unfortunately, and we don't seem to be able to do anything about it, a lot of the older stock of bungalows that we have here in the Medway towns have ceased to be bungalows and become houses. In the report, there was mention of there was having a condition to ensure that didn't happen, but I couldn't find it among the conditions on the report. Perhaps I missed it. If I have missed it, perhaps could the Vice Chair please add that during his summing up. But overall, I think this is a good scheme, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but as we were discussing later on this evening, we've got a lot of pressure on us to build, and at least at the bottom line of this one is it's a nice looking development. Hopefully we'll supply really good quality homes for future residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Golvin. Dave's just going to come back in on that.
Chair, thank you very much. And members have raised some good points. Councillor Golvin has raised some good points. And I certainly don't want to to knock any of the comments made by the ward councillors, and made some really valid comments tonight in what they've said. In relation to materials, good points that you've made, and it is a discussion I've had with Councillor Pearce over the last year, that in terms of the new developments taking place in Who, the developments that have been undertaken by the smaller house builders in terms of materials have been of better quality. And I'm pleased to say that this will be a smaller house builder here. So you're absolutely right to raise that point. In relation to doctors and the surgery, again, Councillor Sands and Councillor Pearce were quite right in terms of that pressure on doctor surgeries, which is a pressure around the whole of Medway towns, and is a pressure generally nationally, but is a particular pressure out on the peninsula. And in my discussions with the health authority as part of the local plan, they've assured me that in terms of priority, the two areas that they're particularly looking at are the peninsula and Strood in order to do something about it, and that's where the pressures are the greatest. In relation to the bus service, again, Councillor Sands and Councillor Pearce have quite rightly raised some issues there in terms of inadequacy. One of the things that we're working on is with the Goodman development out at Kingsnorth, where the Section 106 required them to have a bus service, which came through here through Who, linking up to Strood and Rochester. Since COVID, that stopped. They're in breach of their Section 106. We are tackling with that issue, but we're also working at an improvement to that, working with the other employers on Kingsnorth, but also with Arriva to get a public bus service which comes down Stoke Road, and I'm hopeful that will be delivered soon, but I do understand the concerns. And then finally, in relation to bungalows, I think we all agree with your comment that too many developments have come forward just with houses or flats and not bungalows. I think there were three reasons for the inclusions of bungalows on this site. One, my officers asked for them because there is a housing need. Two, the parish council. Although the parish council were against the outline application when it was presented to them, they did say that they had concerns regarding the home there and the outlook of residents from the home. So they've said that if development was to come forward, they'd prefer to see bungalows in that area, which is exactly what's proposed there. So it shows a developer listening to the parish council. And then finally, in relation to your point about condition 3 covers that, removal of permitted development rights to stop that extension.
Thank you. Councillor Gilbourne.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A lot of the comments have already been covering sort of the questions I had, but just wanted to comment that the development itself looks nice. It's I would dare I say, a bog standard, nice mixture of everything, and looks fine. It was just really the concerns about Stoke Road, but Dave has kindly filled in all about the bus services, which was my real concern. And assuming that can be done particularly with Aviva, that would be a real bonus because of all the extra developments which will continue to move out from Stoke Road as the next 10 years progress. But I would support this as it stands with those conditions about improvements to Stoke Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's also important that as a committee that we realise this is reserved matters, that the principle of an outline application and the principle of development has been decided by a previous committee, and actually it's for us to look at the merit of the evidence that's given tonight and make that decision. So I think it's important to do that. I think it's a really interesting discussion on sustainable transport here, and I think there's one thing I just want to make sure that we're working, that our transport planning side and our planning and development side are working together as one. I think it seems clear here that there's wanting to need investment in walking infrastructure here. There's wanting to have infrastructure for buses. Just making sure, because this corridor probably should have been part of the Medway local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, but it isn't on it. And I'm wondering whether we can have a word with our transport plan teams to make sure that we're actually looking at a corridor basis here, and that would also include provision of bus stops as well. I think would also be important matters. Obviously, one of the earlier in the very useful presentation from Aaron, there was obviously a useful diagram of the developments that are going around here and the patchwork of them together. So the question actually is, have we got multiple pots of funding? Obviously, there's section 278 for what's probably being developed here, you know, for their boundary, but is there provisions within, because I can see 5 or 6 sites of medium-sized development, are we pulling them all together, and can we do that to work to deliver the type of corridor that we're going to need to support sustainable development here?
Chair, short answer, yes. I'm working very closely with Rob Carman and James Sutton in that public transport team in relation to the bus service along Stoke Road, particularly in relation to what I said about Kings North and so on, and generally in the bus stops. So I'm still hopeful we'll see that very soon. And yes, those Section 106 contributions towards public transport improvements, highway improvements, community infrastructure improvements, we're getting them from all these developments, because it's absolutely critical. We shouldn't have the homes without the infrastructure.
Thank you. Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to be kind to committee. I'll say it's already been said. I've got to say, though, Councillor Galvin, here I go again. I'm agreeing with you. It's a very worrying habit I've got. And I agree with what Councillor Gilbourne said. And I do have sympathy for what was said about buses, routes being in place, because habits are hard to break. This sort of distances, when I couldn't drive a few months ago, I didn't think twice about walking 15 minutes and walking 15 minutes to the next end, but there are loads of people that will. I do want to, I'm really glad what Councillor Field said about, this is the whole point about us managing, isn't it? About something that we care about, getting these things into plan. Part of that plan is, as it says on page 41, I want to emphasise the fact that it's in effect being recognised, isn't it, about lack of bus routes on the peninsula and how the council's new local plan are expected to come forward along with a local plan time frame. And I just want to emphasise that is part of there. That's one of the whole points about a local plan. I know obviously a reaver or a animal to themselves, but if we can somehow encourage that to be in place at the same time as development, wouldn't that be wonderful? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Oh, Councillor Hellcroft-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hamilton mentioned the health that I was worried about, but I'm also wanting to thank Aaron Nichols for, I have to say, such a comprehensive report, and, remind some colleagues of how they voted on the local plan. I thought Councillor Sands, was very passionate and certainly knows his area, but, people do need to live somewhere, and the conditions that Aaron's attached on page 52 are addressing everything we've spoke about. I'm not a fan of bungalows, even though I'm disabled, because I do think that if we can afford to, they take up too much space, and there's far too what I call bungalow munching, where there are bungalows and then rich developers come along and put 6 stories on them or whatever. Turn them out of bungalows. But, flats with lifts are very accessible, in my opinion. Councillor Curry, my ward partner, worked really hard with Dave and his dynamic team, because we had no local plan, and it is amenities and it is infrastructure that we need, which hopefully that will be addressed. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member? No? Okay, well, I'm quite happy with what's been put in front of us, with the appearance, landscape, layout and scale, materials being used. So I will therefore be voting for this application. I'll now move over to Councillor Jones, Vice Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Planning application my screen has disappeared. Planning application to the south of Stoke Road, adjacent to Yew Tree Lodge, Hewson-Wearbo, Rochester. Recommendation approval with conditions as set out in the report. Condition 4 now being deleted because the submission of a service strategy has been deemed as no longer required. And therefore the various conditions on landscaping, ecology and climate change, energy efficiency are renumbered backwards, and additional condition 7 is inserted on landscape maintenance and management as set out by the officer. And I propose all that, and I also note the Chief Planning Officer to hold further discussions with the applicant on the footpath and the play area. I think that's all I can really move in relation to this application, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Is that seconded? Thank you. Those for?
That's 13.
Thank you. The application is therefore approved. We'll just wait for Councillor Pearce to come back before moving on to... so agenda item 7, planning application, as mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, has been withdrawn. So the next agenda item is agenda 8. Councillor Pearce, are you joining us? Right, so agenda item 8, the performance report. Dave Harris, Chief Planning Officer, will be presenting this. So over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. Members have a detailed report in front of them, just in terms of the usual slides, which gives some visual to those. So, number of applications received in this quarter and determined are just down there. If that continues, it will follow the trend of the last 2 years. Then looking at major applications determined and the performance there, absolutely exceptional performance by the team there. You'll see that's there, that's the requirement for us to achieve in terms of performance. This is where the team are 100%, both for applications determined in time and those with an extension of time. For minor applications, that's our target. And again, significantly above that, both with an extension time and without an extension time, over 90%. And similarly with other applications, that's your householder type applications. Target there in blue. This is the performance of the team, quite exceptional there with those with an extension time, 100%. Planning fees, we had a really good start to the year, which is always welcome. That probably relates to some big applications coming in, which the team have got to manage. Probably link also to planning performance agreements, which help me to resource the team and in turn manage the pressure on the team in terms of work. And then this looks at how we compare to other local authorities. So that's shown in blue, and our performance next to them. So we are better in terms of performance than other local authorities in the country, and similarly with those within the agreed planning extension agreement. This is a chart which looks at how we're performing just to our fellow councillors in Kent. So percentage of decisions granted. That percentage, you normally look at a high figure for that, because that's what we've got to try and do. Your starting point is the application should be approved unless there are significant problems with it. And we do try to work with applicants to get acceptable schemes. So we've got 92% there, so that's a good performance. Then percentage within extension time, you're looking at a smaller percentage there, because we should be, and we're encouraged by government, to determine applications quickly and without an extension time. So at 17%, we actually perform very well compared to other authorities. The major development percentage determined within 13 weeks. Again, it should be a higher figure, according to the government, but we got a lot of super big applications in Medway. And those applications normally require Section 106s to get the infrastructure and contributions. And as soon as you bring in Section 106s, the ability to determine those applications within 13 weeks is practically nil. So what we're doing there, that 35%, that means all those major applications which didn't require a Section 106, we've effectively determined within time. And then it's the non-major applications within 8 weeks, so it's the minor ones. 61%, again, you can see how we compare favourably with almost every other authority in Kent. Then householder applications, 90%. Again, look at that performance compared to other authorities in Kent. Appeals, we continue to have appeals against decisions where we consider a proposal to be unacceptable or where there has been an appeal against a condition. So that target in terms of appeals allowed against appeals dismissed, it's not a national target. It's our one. We try to have no more than 30% allowed. Otherwise, it starts to highlight that we're maybe not doing things right in terms of how inspectors are considering things. But you can see here that we've had 2 allowed and 6 dismissed with 1 withdrawn. So that's good for the quarter, and it shows how we're performing pretty well in terms of that informal target. And we do, unfortunately, have some permitted development schemes, prior approvals, and that shows how we're considering those. Now, members, you know our housing target. We'll come on to it later under Housing Delivery Test Action Plan. So we look at the number of units under construction. In 2024, it's pretty good, 1,328 under construction, slightly down on the year before. We'll see how that pans out in relation to delivery when we get the figures later this year. Number of units completed shows how that relates year on year. It's good, but we're still below the 1,600 that we're required to have under our target, as you can see here. So there is still an ongoing shortfall. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the Housing Delivery Test Action Plan. And this just shows how we're comparing to other Kent authorities. So you can see there's a lot of housing delivery in Medway, which we know because you deal with a lot of the major cases here at committee. Enforcement, it's really important that we have a strong and effective enforcement service so that the public have confidence in the planning service, and also that those people who do breach planning control know that if it's unacceptable, we will take action against them. So you can see here the work that the team led by Peter doing on that. So that what you can see a significant amount of work for the 3 enforcement officers and the derelict and empty properties officer. We're also responsible for trees, TPO applications, so they still come in, and I'm still employing a consultant to deal with these to free up Mike Sankas's capacity to deal with other tree issues, and there are a lot of other tree issues in the authority, and to get more involved in tree issues on planning applications. Because with climate change, tree issues on planning applications, very, very important that we address those. And Mike provides an important role within the team on that. I'm also responsible for the lead local flood authority, and you can see the work that Gabby does there, and her performance is simply exceptional. And in relation to complaints and compliments, members, you know that we work in an environment where someone's going to be unhappy. If we approve something, those objected to it are unhappy. If we refuse something, those that submitted the applications are unhappy. And sometimes you get concerns about delays, you get concerns regarding that we've not responded to an enforcement matter quickly enough, or that we haven't communicated. So we get complaints all the time, like other departments in the council, but we also get a huge number of compliments. And members, you will see in the report, and I'm trying to find the page now. Sorry, what was that? 111. 109, page 109. Thank you very much. The compliments that we received. So I only upheld one complaint through the quarter, and that was a delay in responding to an alleged breach of a TPO. We've created an enforcement case there. We are investigating it. We are taking it forward, but we've apologised for the delay. But then if you look on page 109, the sheer volume of compliments to the team. And it's unusual, isn't it? We as a race, we seem to be very quick to be able, we complain if something's not satisfactory, but if we get the service, a good service, we don't necessarily take the time to drop an email in to compliment them. So the fact that we got so many compliments there, I think it's a real credit to my officers and my team. And indeed, I was having an informal conversation with a couple of planning consultants very recently who were completely, trying to think of the right word, disillusioned with the planning generally around in the country, and planning generally in terms of how local planning authorities are responding to issues. And they were they were making concerns about officers not phoning back, officers not being positive, which we're required to do, generally not being communicative, refusing things without any notice. And then they said the exception is Medway Council. And that made me really proud of my officers, because it means my officers are communicating, they are engaging. They're not necessarily telling them what they want to hear, but they are communicating. And that's important, because I want to stress that. We're not saying to people, yeah, that's fine, if it's not fine. But we are saying to them, if it's not acceptable, we are saying it's not acceptable for these reasons, and we're communicating that. That's really important. So that's a real credit to the team. So, Chairman, I'm very proud and pleased to report this performance report to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any comments from any members? Councillor Holcroft-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. And can I just say thank you? I sub on this committee, and I do love subbing on this committee, and I'm a bit of a novice, but you do make things, you simplify the necessary and you eliminate the unnecessary for me. And I really do appreciate your honesty and your commitment, and how user-friendly your presentations and your work is. So, and also you've been doing this as well as spinning plates for the local plan. So, you know, I don't have favourites, but if I did, you'd be one of my favourite teams. So thank you.
Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on page 104, it says he rushing to it. Sorry, my inability to sometimes understand graphs. I don't always get on with them. Oh yeah, I'm here, sorry. So I just get into it. Thank you for that. When you've got the complaints and, well, where's the title? Under enforcement, and you've got the blue column and you've got the orange column. Complaints received, and then you've got monitoring existing cases. So that complaints received, that is literally that number in that period there. Is that as obvious as that? It doesn't seem like a very big number. That's why I had doubt. But that's good, obviously. And then that is so and the balance between that monitoring existing cases, there's a large ongoing monitoring number at the same time. That's what I picked up from that. So
yes, you're quite right, Councillor Peake. Yeah. These are ongoing cases. That's 1,000 ongoing cases. Wow. There. New cases in the month. In the quarter, probably around about 100 new cases coming in. Now, they obviously vary. Some of them are probably really straightforward and easy to resolve. Others can take a considerable amount of time to investigate. But,
just the complexity, yeah. Sorry, Peter.
Yeah, just to add to that, obviously, because it's a quarter and it's a 3-month period, it does average that we get generally an new enforcement complaint every day of the month. So it's whilst it doesn't look particularly big in terms of the bar, in terms of what's coming through the door, it is a significant number.
And that's because it takes so long to do. Yeah, I appreciate that. Can I just say on page 109, I'm a big believer in the idea of teamwork, but teams are made out of individuals, so it's important to celebrate the individual. So in that context, on the very last one, it goes, I feel the officer has gone above and beyond. I did not expect this level of service. I mean, that's really good. Can you just give me some idea, without being too personal, how do you recognise that particular officer that presumably has been named, you know who they are? How do you give feedback for that?
Councillor Peake, that's a really good question and a very, very important point. It's really important to me that that when I receive a compliment about one of my officers, that one, they see that compliment, two, I thank them for it myself, but I also make sure that the assistant director and chief executive, in some cases, are all advised of those compliments, depending on exactly what it is. And I have to say credit to the AD, the director, and the chief executive. If I have forward ones up to them, they also go back to the officer as well. So I'm grateful to them. But yes, you're absolutely right. Officers shouldn't be seeing these for the first time when they reading this report. They should be seeing the compliment, and they should be having some feedback from me and thanks from me, and I like to think that I do that.
So, Chair, can I just say, I'm so pleased to hear that. There's other cultures. I've worked in those cultures, like in the City of London. I remember one particular company I worked for where if things go right, the senior management would take all the plaudits, as if all the people actually doing the work, generating income, haven't done anything. So it's so good to hear of a culture where it does go back down to the person that should be given the praise. And that encourages, obviously, people to buy into the job. They're unseen contract, they're going to work harder. So.
Yeah, if it's okay, Chair, to continue this conversation, because I totally agree with Councillor Peake. We have a relatively low turnover of planning staff, and I like to think that when planning staff leave, they leave for the right reasons, i.e. career development, rather than for the wrong reasons that they're disillusioned in their post. And you could be the greatest manager in the world, but if you don't have a good team, you're not going to perform. So but I must remember that and make sure that my team are recognised, because I would be rubbish if it wasn't for them.
Councillor Goldwyn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd sort of like to follow, for the moment, Councillor Peake's comments. Reading this report, it's absolutely exemplary. And I think perhaps the Vice Chair, in his summing up for this item, could perhaps indicate the committee's thanks to Dave and his officers, because there's a lot of work. And it's not just this report either. It's you go back over the years, we've had similar reports to this. Our planners have really outperformed a lot of other colleagues. There is something in this report that does concern me. If we go back to page 85, 86 of the actual agenda, where Dave's talking about the background, it really does concern me about the government's proposals for planning committees. It looks like they've moved away from virtually doing away with them all together, but they're saying they should be smaller. Yes, if we'd had a smaller committee in this room this evening, we would probably get through the business a little bit more quickly because there would have been less points made. But the fact where you've got a group of individuals that have read the agenda, found questions they would like answered, I think that gives a high level of scrutiny to every application that we go through. And there is a difference between the planning committee and other committees. If other committees get it wrong, there's a fairly good chance you can reverse it. On this committee, if we get it wrong, and the planning colleagues get it wrong, Medway is stuck with that for a long, long time. And, so I think it is important to get this right. Yes, and it's right, it's suggested that members should remain undertake mandatory legal and planning training. Yeah, but I thought we already did this. And I think, you know, tonight's proved it. We've got all of us around the table have taken an interest in planning, even as Joe said, you know, if you're not there, and everyone, I think every member's taken along a good interest in it. So it really does concern me. And also, it does say in the report that we did make reply to the consultation. Would it be possible, Madam Chair, for the committee members to see what that response was? Because I'd certainly be interested to know. And the other good thing I think that out of this that was very interesting was Medway's contribution to the BOPS project. You know, we seem to, you know, our officers seem to have excelled on the, you know, the back office planning systems, for, you know, for BOPS. You know, again, I think we've come out of that very well indeed, and I think that should be noted as well. So, but I go back just a bit. I really do worry that, you know, the democratic element of the planning process is going to be severely curtailed. And I think it's ironic because this report we've just had proves it can be done properly, and we are doing it properly. And I think it's a shame that we are going to be penalised because there might be a few other authorities up and down the country that are not doing it as well as we are. And I think that is really, really disappointing because I think, you know, we show that you know, both officers and members working together can make the system work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think you're right. We are one of the best running planning departments and committees, and that is noted. And it is because of the ways others perform around the country that we could end up being penalised for that. And yes, I'm more than happy for that report to be circulated that you asked for. Thank you, Councillor Golvin. I'll now go to Councillor Nastoroff.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to add my congratulations for this report. It's really, really stellar performance. We have an amazing team here, and they need to know that. I wanted to ask about a couple of things on the report. Sorry, I lost my... So I noticed that the percentage of appeals allowed is just over the target of 30% on page 101. To my understanding, we should have less than 30 or more than 30. That's a question.
Chair, it's a good point that Councillor Nestorov makes. So that target of 30% is our informal target because if we go above that, as you say, greater than that, then it tends to highlight that, well, maybe there are some issues. So as you quite rightly point out, for the 3 quarters before the last quarter, we had more appeals. We had over 30% of appeals allowed. This quarter, we're below, so we've had a good quarter, which is good news. But it's just that Peter and I, we keep an eye on that and we review all appeal decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. And my second question is about enforcement. I know it's the hardest part of the job. I just wanted to ask, obviously there are a lot of cases that you and your team are still dealing with. What is the ultimate result that you want to see? And what tools do you have to battle this enforcement? Because I've been having emails from residents, and you can see an email chain that goes back for years for certain property that they've been in enforcement, they've been in contact with the council, and still nothing is happening. So my point is, what tools do we have to actually stop people that are breaking the planning rules?
And another good question. Thank you for that. So what's our aim? Our aim is to resolve the breach. Now sometimes the breach is acceptable. So we'll just get an application in to regularise it, and that's fine. So that resolves it. If it's not acceptable, it's then working with the person who's done it to try and either get it to stop or remove it or do it in a way which is acceptable in terms of hours or whatever. Now, sometimes it's quite quickly resolved, where someone has done something quite innocently and we have a complaint, we go and see them and they go, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't realise, I'll take that fence down, I'll put that right straight away, and it's resolved quite quickly. Other times it takes longer than that, as you can see from the from this, and it's trying to find solutions. So it could, as I said, it could be an application, it could be changing something, reducing it, or whatever. Sometimes people are bloody-minded and are deliberately slow. And the reason they're deliberately slow is because they've fallen out with their neighbour, so they're doing something to wind them up. They know that all enforcement is confidential, but they know where the complaint has come from, so they're a bit slow about addressing it, and that causes a delay. And then you get those cases where someone is saying, I'm going to do something, I know it's unauthorised, do your worst, council, because I know that by the time you've got through the process, years will have gone by. And I say that years will have gone by because and some of your councillors would have experienced this. If we've got someone who's doing a big use or a development which is completely unacceptable, then we go to them and we try to get it put right, and there's that time that's taken on that where they delay in coming back to us, and they say, oh, we're just trying to sort this out. So they try all sorts of delay tactics. We finally serve an enforcement notice, which requires them to do certain things within a certain time to put it right. But there's a certain period of time which take place before the notice comes into effect. It's a legal requirement. And they have to appeal within that time. They leave it to the last day. They put the appeal in the last day. But they also know that the planning inspectorate are completely under-resourced in relation to planning inspectors with any expertise on enforcement. So we've got a number of cases at the moment which are at appeal and have been at appeal for over 2 years. And that's unacceptable. And I'm working with the MPs to try and help get the resources for the planning inspectorate on that, because at the moment the planning inspectorate prioritise new appeals for residential, and I know they cause some stress. We've people object to them and they cause people stress and anxiety and anxious, but they're not impacting on people's daily lives. But the inspectorate prioritise those. An enforcement case is impacting daily on the people who made that complaint, and then they're suffering that for years before we get an appeal decision, and it's not acceptable, and it's really harmful to their mental health as well. So we're trying to put pressure on. We're working with the MPs to try and put pressure on the planning inspectorate and the government to sort that. In relation to tools available to us, we've got enforcement notices. Pete's talked about breach of condition notices that we can do. We've got injunctions. There are a number of tools available to us. We have an exceptional legal team here who Pete and my enforcement officers work very closely with, so that we're taking the appropriate action, which we think will be successful at the end of the day. But Councillor Nestorov, yes, it can take a long time, as you'll see. Yeah.
I'm sure it will be.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Fern.
Yep, thank you, and echo everybody else's words really, Dave. Congratulations to you and your team for continuing to provide first-class service. I just want to pick you up on one point that you mentioned in 4.11 in the report, and also that you referred to. And I guess one concern to me is sort of how sustainable the model of relying on consultants and managing sort of ongoing pressures are. What's your longer-term strategy to sort of build internal capacity, I guess, and take away that reliance and expense of using those consultants?
Thank you, Councillor Fern. That's a really good question, because I would prefer not to use consultants. And I'm touching wood here. We're in a really, really fortunate position at the moment. I have a very relatively low turnover of staff, and I've got some incredibly good, experienced staff, Pete, the seniors, my principals. The number of steps I've taken in recent past to deal with it are, I had a restructure about a year or so ago. It did cause some anxiety to my officers, because any restructure causes that anxiety. But what it was doing was to try and create a structure which gave staff somewhere where they can move. So your planners can see that they become a senior planner can see they can become a principal planner can look at Pete and say, well, if he ever takes over my job, they've got somewhere for them to go. So there has that promotion. They can see that promotion possibilities here in Medway and don't have to leave. So that helps me with that resource. The recent pay rises in the last 2 years have obviously helped staff in terms of how we now compare to other authorities. I think, and I'm not just saying it because I'm sat here in front of you, but having a good planning committee makes a big difference. There is an authority not far from here where the planning committee is not so good, and a consultant handed in their resignation in the middle of the committee because of the way that committee was behaving. Don't have that here. We've got again, Councillor Galvin was absolutely right. You don't always agree with me. Tonight there's been differences of views around in the chamber, but you've been discussing things on the planning merits, not for political reasons, and you've made good points and you've come to balanced judgments, which is all about planning. So it's a good planning committee. That helps greatly, because my officers see that. The other thing is that we are out to recruitment for the vacant posts as well. So we're out to advert for the tree officer. We're out to advert for a flood officer. We're about to interview for a technical assistant post in Pete's team, and we're hopeful that we'll fill those posts. One of the things that we've done in Pete's team is that we looked at the pressure, and we felt that we had 4 planners. Pete and I felt that we could cope with just 3 planners, but downgrade one of the posts to a technical officer, and then get help grow our own. So get a school leaver, a sixth former, A-level student, sponsor them through university. That's what a lot of private sector people are now doing. And we get to keep them because we're paying for them to go to university. So they're here for that time, and then they've got that career structure as well when they finish that. So we've got something like 7. You're interviewing about seven people. And we had a good response to that. So it's those sort of things. And the other thing is never to rest on your laurels. And I've seen that's happen to other authorities who have thought, right, we're a really good service, we're a great planning department, we'll just continue doing what we're doing. You all know we live in a changing world, and you can never rest on your laurels, and you've always got to keep thinking, what are private sector doing, what are other authorities doing, because I don't want them stealing my staff. Hopefully that's a comprehensive response, Matt.
Thank you. Any other member? No, so I'd just like to pass on my thanks, Dave, to yourself and your team for all the hard work that you put in. It really is appreciated. I understand the pressures that you're under and the long hours that you work as well. Okay, so I now move over to Vice Chairperson, Councillor Jones.
The Vice Chair seconds the commendation of the Chair and the whole committee, indeed, for the staff performance, and the Chief Planning Officer is asked to pass that on to the staff. This report is presented to the Planning Committee to be asked to consider and note. It's submitted to assist the committee in monitoring planning activity, and I so move.
Is that seconded? Right, those for the report?
That's 14, Chair.
The report is therefore approved. So now we move on to agenda item 9, which is appeal decisions. over to Dave. Oh, sorry, Councillor Goldwyn.
Madam Chair, could I beg a comfort break, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry. If we're just
Thank you
going to
very-
pause for 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to carry on with tonight's planning committee. We're now going on to agenda item 9, which is appeal decisions. Dave Harris, Chief Planning Officer, will be presenting this report. So over to you, Dave.
Chair, thank you very much. As members will see from the report, there's just 2 appeals that were allowed to talk through with you. The first was one that you'll have seen in the press quite a lot, and will have seen various reports on it. This is the council's land, coach park, or former coach park, used as a traveller site. The land ownership is not an issue that can be considered under planning, so that's being considered separately. But here the inspector took the view that the travellers here, we've got a shortage of sites for them. He didn't attach much weight to the emerging local plan and sites within that. In fact, I don't think he attached any weight. In relation to our concerns regarding external and internal amenity for the travellers on there through noise from the M2, his comments were that the council can, working with the travellers, could construct an acoustic barrier which will improve things. Then in relation to visual impact, he said that the council owns the land on the here and could landscape that to soften the travellers. It was an unusual appeal decision in terms of some of his comments. If it hadn't been for the fact that the council owns that vergeway, and if it had been in a different ownership, I don't see how he could have come to a conclusion that a third party, which the council are effectively on this, could landscape something. So I thought it was an unusual comment. In relation to acoustic measures, he didn't say that the acoustic barrier would secure compliance with standards. He just said it will make things better for the occupiers, and the occupiers are happy with it. So again, it was an unusual comment to make, but our ability or likelihood of sustaining a challenge against the decision, having taken legal advice, was very, very unlikely. So we've got a traveller site in planning terms there for 10 touring caravans with no statics, but with a condition for further plans to be submitted to show how they're going to properly lay out the site and deal with the acoustic barrier. In relation to the second appeal, which was in terms of a tree, again, it was an unusual appeal decision, in my view. The application was to fell an oak tree, this tree there. The inspector agreed that the oak tree was there was nothing to show that the oak tree was not in good condition. He also accepted that it's quite visual, as you can see from the photograph there, and he also agreed that there was nothing which said that the tree was having an unacceptable impact on the structural stability of the house. However, he allowed the tree to be felled on the basis that there were other trees in more public areas, so you wouldn't miss a tree quite so much, and also the fact that there's a small garden and the tree was having a big impact on the amenities of the occupiers of the property. That's an unusual reason for allowing a tree to be felled, I've got to say, in my experience. But he did allow the appeal, and the tree will be removed. So, any questions, members?
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any members? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just a question: did the inspector put a condition on in terms of replacing that tree, like with what we've done before, with having two new trees planted to replace that one? Thank you.
No, and that's a really good question, Councillor Pearce. When we consider it, as you say, we would look to either condition a replacement tree on site, or we would go for a contribution to get a tree or trees off-site, like we've done with those ones recently. In this instance, the inspector said, well, there's no room for a tree on site, so he didn't impose that condition. Again, very unusual, and I'm surprised at that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gilbourne?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In relation to the traveller site, as you know, Dave, I'm particularly annoyed that it's got to this stage after they were given a 3-month temporary licence over 2 years ago now. But I know it's all down to sites at the end of the day, and it's obvious to everybody that if we could move them to another site, I'm sure we all would. Apart from the northwest, there's the Blowerswood development. There's 88 houses which are now on hold, probably not going to go ahead because of this judgment. But I'm interested by what you said about the other planning applications will come forward to add more to this site by the travellers. Because the council own the land, how will that affect how you as a planning department can really assess those plans?
Sorry, Councillor Gilbourne, are you talking about the other land here that we own? Is that what you're talking about? Sorry.
Yeah, just the fact that I think even within the judgment, there's an expectation now that they've won this appeal that they will come forward with plans for more people, effectively more buildings on the site. I remember at the appeal they talked about, oh, if we win the appeal, we'll want a day room, we'll want statics, things like that. And I just wondered, as the owner of the site, how will the council approach those applications?
That's a really good question, Councillor Gilbourne. I mean, yes, there are the conditions on the planning appeal, which limits it to 10 tourists with no statics. So the inspector has been very clear in relation to the appeal site, which was just a hard standing. He accepted that there was a lot of other structures and things occurring on site, but he felt that which have an unacceptable impact on the visual amenities of the area. But he felt that was partly due to the fact that they had no certainty of staying there. So by granting approval to it, allowing the appeal, and imposing a condition which says, they should come in with a plan which shows how they're going to lay out the site, but also how they're going to deal with those other issues regarding day rooms and amenity blocks. But he took the view that by having purpose-built blocks or something done properly, it would remove some of the other clutter in here. We'll have to carefully consider those when they come in. As landowner, I can't comment on what the council are going to do as landowner, but I appreciate the question. But
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Peake.
Sorry. On 123, the amount of £7,500 been awarded, and it was the language, the council's behaviour was unreasonable, and the applicant was prepared to bear the cost. Now, this one does ring a bell. Can you remind me what the circumstances for this is? This is the rain and pumping station. Please.
Sorry, thanks, Councillor Peake. Yeah, this was an application which is along Lower Rainham Road, which is where the chicane is. And there was an old pumping station or something there. And Southern Water put in an application for 2 houses, which are now under construction. We as officers recommended approval to it. Members of the committee, and this was several years ago, so I think it might even well have been pre-2023, actually, the appeal, i.e. pre-election 23. The members of the planning committee felt that the vehicular access to those 2 homes, right on that chicane where you've got cars stopping and moving and stuff like that, that it would add to the highway safety issues at that area. Now, I understood why members had those concerns, and they refused the application based on that. The inspector took the view that members had no technical evidence that there would be that highway danger. In hindsight, thinking it through, well, how would we address that again? Because I understood members' concerns, and I think what we would have to do in such circumstances, if members were minded to approve something on a technical basis, highway danger, we would probably go for a deferral of the application for our highway people to look at accident records and other things like that. That might not win the appeal, but it would certainly save us costs. Because the inspector said you had no evidence, no technical evidence.
Any other member? No, I now move over to Vice Chairperson, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're asked to note and consider the report, which we have done, and I so move.
Is that seconded? Those for the report?
That's 14, Chair.
Report is therefore approved. Now we move on to agenda item 10, which is section 106 agreements. David Harris, Chief Planning Officer, will be presenting this report. So over to you, Dave.
Chair, thank you very much. Got a report in front of you regarding section 106s for the quarter. So appendix 1 has got section 106 funding received. Appendix 2 is agreements signed in that quarter, and then appendix 3 is the SAMS bird payments. Happy to answer any questions, and if I can't answer them, happy to get my section 106 officers to respond.
Thank you. Any members? Councillor Gilbourne.
It was just a question I had, because I noticed on Facebook a few weeks ago that the people in Rainham were starting to ask about Section 106 agreements because of all the development that's happened in Rainham. And they've been told, or some people have been told, oh, well, this money's going to be spent on health services and things like that. And they've said, oh, but we can't see anything happening. So I just wondered about how we should be able to communicate these sorts of things to our residents, just so that they know that it will come eventually, and also almost how the decisions are made so that they can really understand that, yeah, they're going to get this big development, but is it actually going to improve their services locally?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gilbourne. Again, a good question. I think there are a number of things there in terms of an answer to it. I think the first thing is that one of the difficulties we have is that a planning application comes in at this point in time. Residents raise concerns regarding the development and the infrastructure and so on. It's then, maybe approved 3 months later or whatever. Then it takes 3 months for Section 106 to be negotiated and agreed. The developer then gets their consent. They go away. They do the land preparation, the land sale, clear conditions. That can take a year, 18 months. They then commence development. And it's then could be another 18 months before we get any contributions in. So by then, so we get the contributions in. Sometimes those contributions have to be pooled because we're looking for something quite big. And then by the time that piece of infrastructure has been delivered, many years have passed, and then residents understandably don't associate that piece of infrastructure, that community building, that school, they don't associate it with the development which got planning permission 5 years before, if you see what I'm saying. So there's part of that an issue. Now we're trying to address that in 2 ways. One, we now need to do an annual infrastructure funding statement, which talks about the money's coming in, what it's been spent on, what we're thinking of spending the money on. So that infrastructure funding statement is produced annually in December. The other thing, though, is that we need to make sure that when we deliver things, that we are better at communicating that. And I'm just going to pick on something that happened to me relatively recently, where I was out at Who. Residents were expressing concern to me that they got development and never seen any infrastructure. And I was able to say to them, well, hold on a second, you've had a whole new primary school delivered. You've had an extension of that primary school. You had other extensions to other primary schools. You've had extensions to the secondary schools there. All the play equipment in all the open spaces has been delivered through Section 106. The new community park at Deangate will be delivered through Section 106. Improvements to the sports centre have been done through Section 106. And they went, we didn't realise that. We saw all these things happening. We didn't realise it was paid through Section 106. So we need to improve our communication. But then finally, in relation to your point and Rainham and health, I think there is an issue there. I think we as an authority are getting better where we have control over the money. If it's for highways, if it's for schools, if it's for open space, if it's for leisure, we're good at getting the money in, we're good at spending it and making on what it should be. I think the health authority have really struggled over recent years. And that is understandably given residents of Medway a lot of concern. That they're seeing more housing, they're seeing more people, but they're not seeing improvements to the health services. And Councillor Pearce and others talked about who quite rightly today. So we're working with the health authority. I'm getting assurances, for instance, at Rainham, that something will happen to the Healthy Living Centre there as a result of the Section 106 money that we've got. But that health issue is an issue. Yeah.
Any other member? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, no, it is true that Who has had a new primary school and lots of Section 106, but just on the primary provision, yes, we have had that new primary school built next to the Hungerford Academy, but when the council did their education assessment, they still concluded that there wasn't enough spaces. So net, even with that additional primary school and with all the development, we're still in a worse position than we were before. And I think that's the same with other aspects, not just education, health. We're net worse on the health. We're net worse on infrastructure and transport. So yes, we have had bits and bobs and money set aside, but we're still in an overall worse position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Now I move over to Vice Chairperson Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. I move that we note and consider the Section 106 contributions as set out in the report for the time period set out in the report, like other reports here as part of our general monitoring process as members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Those for the report?
That's 14, Chair.
The report is therefore approved. Now moving on to agenda item 11, Medway Housing Delivery Test Action Plan. Over to you, Dave.
Chair, thank you very much. Members, you get this report once a year, so it's for information. It's been to Cabinet. Basically, housing delivery test measures delivery of homes against the housing need, and I've touched on earlier in terms of a housing need is just over 1,600. The housing delivery test looks at the 3 years prior to the date as to what was the need and what has been the housing delivery. And if we are a 95% or below, then we've got to do an action plan. If we're at 85% or below, then there's a 20% buffer applied. And if we're at 75% or below, then we have an added presumption in favour of sustainable development. Now, whilst, as you can see from the report, our performance year on year has been improving, we're still not meeting our need as calculated by using the standard methodology. And as a result, whilst we marginally got over 75% last year, we're back down to 72% for this year. So we've got to do an action plan again. We've got to do we've got the 20% buffer, which members, I don't understand. If we can't achieve this, how can we achieve this plus 20%? I really don't grasp that myself, and no one's been able to explain that to me. But then we've also got the presumption in favour. Now, the action plan is in front of you. It's been agreed by Cabinet, and effectively what this needs to show is how we are engaging with the development industry and what measures that we're taking to improve housing delivery. And you'll see that in the report here. The most fundamental thing we've done recently is the Reg 19 local plan. That's critically important in terms of showing the sites what that should be coming forward, also helping us to defend the sites that we don't want to come forward as well. But then if you look at page 162, other measures, Councillor Fern touched on this earlier, resourcing of the planning department, improving pre-application advice. We give a very comprehensive, chargeable service there that helps me to resource the service. It also helps to guide developers as to what would be acceptable, and also helps to improve the quality. We've got planning performance agreements. It doesn't agree a decision, approval, refusal, but what it agrees is a process and a communication, and we get money for that, which helps with the resourcing. Planning conditions, not having too many pre-commencement conditions because they delay things. Development briefs and design guidance, things like the Chatham Design Code. Empty homes, doing something about those, and we've now got an empty homes officer. Engaging positively with the development sector, and we've signed up to the planning protocol for Kent and Medway. Supporting SMEs, we were the authority that helped deliver or helped form the SME forum, which was originally just for Medway, then became North Kent, and now is expanding, and that helps to support our SMEs survive, but also improve the quality of their planning submissions as well. Affordable homes, Medway members, you know that there is an issue regarding the delivery of affordable homes at the moment. We're one of the few authorities that are looking at ways to enable affordable homes to come forward outside of maybe a Section 106 process. It does carry some risks. We won't do it all the time, but we have done, and members have supported me on that, and we haven't been let down as yet. MDC, doing our own housing delivery, and also the HRA, the Housing Revenue Account as well. And then we've got a regeneration team who are helping to bring forward regeneration strategy, work in Chatham and Rochester and Strood, Love Gillingham and other things. So that just, those pages set out the measures that we're taking to try and help improve housing delivery. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a very interesting report, and obviously a lot of work's being done on it. And I particularly found the Lichfields report, that the link was there, very interesting. Whilst, yes, a huge amount of work's been done to this around the periphery, I think it has probably made a small difference. The fact is, we will never, ever meet those housing numbers. The housing market depends on markets, and the big housing developers have worked out that the most effective rate of completions for them is somewhere between 50 and 60 units a year. All the time that they feel that is the best business model to have, you can make all the reports you like in the world, but nothing will change. And I really do think we need to go back to government and tell them this is absolute nonsense. As Dave said, with adding an extra 20% on, it makes it even more ridiculous. And what is concerning, when it mentions in the report, the only reason why we've been able to get more houses done is we've had greater use of greenfield sites. And surely, that makes a whole nonsense of our local plan being based on brownfield sites first, because both this report and the Lichfield report quite clearly states the obvious, is that brownfield sites are far more difficult develop, and the chance of getting affordable housing out of them much less because of the affordability issue. So whilst I think the officers have done, it's a good report, and they've brought up a lot of interesting things, at the end of the day, it's a complete and utter waste of time. Because as Mrs. Thatcher said all those years ago, the market will always win. She was right then 30 years ago, and she's right now. If you try and buck the market, you're on a hiding to nothing.
Thank you. Any other member? No? Thank you. Is the report agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, officers and members. That is now the end of tonight's planning committee.